Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about pre-rendering web pages and the use case. So let's get into it. So the question in question was pretty much that. Frederick, what is the use case of a pre-rendered web page? Well, the short answer is that there's not that much of a difference between a pre-rendered page and a static HTML page. The main difference is you can think of, at the very least, is that in one case, when you're dealing with a static website, you're literally writing out your content into the HTML. That's probably the mental picture that you can paint for yourself. So you have an HTML file, you want to show some text or something like that to a user, so you sit there in your HTML file and you type away and you enter all of that information in, right? Well, now when you're dealing with a pre-rendered page, this is not necessarily what you do, but what usually you do is that you separate those two. It is in a very similar sense the same thing as just having a template, an HTML template on a server where you render every time a user goes to your web page, and then you just render out a list of the dynamic information or different contents and stuff of that nature. But here you're actually doing it once instead. You're not doing it every time a user goes to your server. You sit at your desk and you write out all the stuff that you want in, say, a format that is better for you. An example would be, let's say that you write all your blogs in a markdown file, which is very popular. And then when you're done writing your markdown files, you use a CLI or some templating tool or something like that that knows how to extract the information from that text file and put it into your HTML, and all of a sudden there you are. Now you have all of that content in a static HTML page, so you don't have to write it inside of that HTML page. And I mean, you can do this for a lot of stuff. If you look at, I think it's called Gatsby, which is an example of a way that you could create a pre-rendered web page where you have so-called different data sources and stuff like that. You can bring in images, you can bring in text and videos and so forth, and then just have those files in, say, a directory or something like that, and then you can generate the entire website or embed all of that content into your HTMLs without having to do it manually. So that is the use case for a pre-rendered page. It's practically, for all intents and purposes, the same thing as a static HTML page. It's just a smoother experience for you to create that content. Now you can, of course, also have the idea that you're going to use server-side, but basic server-side rendering, where you're actually doing this on every request. Now the difference between a server-side rendered application where you render every time a user goes to your website and a pre-rendered page is that the server-side rendered case is trying to cater to the scenario where a user needs to see new information every time they go to a page. An example would be, let's say that you have a database of thousands and thousands and thousands of products. Well, you're going to show those products in most cases on two pages. You're going to show them on an overview where the user sees a list of, oh, these are all the things that you can buy, and then you're going to show them on the actual purchase page where you can get more product information. Now in both those cases you could, well, technically in just one of those cases, you could have said that, okay, on the purchase page I'm just going to pre-render all of this stuff, so I'm going to have 1,000 different HTML files in my on my server that can be loaded based on what the user clicks on the main page and goes to and wants to see, right? Now the problem with the main page, on the other hand, is that if you refresh that page, do you want the exact same products every single time? And then the second thing is, well, if you have thousands of products, you can't really show them all on one page, so you might want to use pagination and things of that nature. And sure, you could have solved that in a different way than using server-side rendering, but I hope that this makes sense to you. In that case, you have so much data that it's just and the content will change practically on every request. Because if you refresh that page 3-4 times, you may not see the same results on that main page. But for a say, blog or something, where you're practically only changing like a fraction of that information, and you might be creating new articles every other month or something like that, and that's content that it's practically just text or a few images, and you don't really need to have an entire database and change and render everything on every request, because rendering does actually give you a slight performance hit. It's not a big deal, but it is definitely a factor. Well, then pre-rendering is perfect. You just do the rendering once, and then you serve up static content. And there are tons of benefit to this apart from the things that I'm saying. Hopefully, though, this will have given you a good sense of what is actually going to, like, what the use case here actually is. So, what I want you to take away from this is that pre-rendering web pages is just something that, like, the use case is very simple. You have a static HTML site that you want to create, and you don't want to have to sit with HTML and directly write everything into an HTML file. And that's where pre-rendering comes in. It's very useful for you to just grab a bunch of files like images and text files and convert all that into a rendered website. And there's tons of tools that can do that for you. You can of course write your own thing. I mean, it's not that hard to have a little script that parses, say, a markdown file and converts it into an HTML page if you wanted to. And it's very efficient to do this if you want to separate your view, the HTML and the CSS, from the data or the content. And that's a perfect use case for it. Have a great day.